And this is actually apropos that Article 6 of the Constitution from Chile that just got voted down, which basically demanded 50% or more female representation at all public and even some semi-public organizations, boards. It was worded strangely. I don't remember exactly. Meanwhile, in again an article in Nature, although it's not somehow, in Nature, September 8th, 2022, we have a Nature News piece called How We Boosted Our Numbers of Female Faculty Members. 3 researchers in Australia offer lessons from an affirmative recruitment initiative for women. I'm just going to read a few sections from this. In 2016, Alex Ozarek, apologies for the pronunciation, who was then head of the School of Mathematics and Statistics, undertook an affirmative action strategy, also known as positive discrimination, to recruit women as faculty members. This was a controversial move, but it was prompted by a clear lack of diversity in the school. Comment: it was controversial, but the motives were good.
Yeah.
Sorry,
it was controversial, but one side was wrong.
Well, no, actually, I mean, okay, but my point is, it was controversial, but they meant well. It was controversial, but we were trying to do the right thing. Okay, trying to do the right thing doesn't mean that the thing that you ended up doing was the right thing. Recognizing that there is there's 2 different issues here. Is there a problem? We might disagree on that. And is the solution that you've proposed to this problem the correct solution? In this case, actually, I think that I disagree with both the fact that there is a problem that needs to be solved here because we're already moving so far, so fast in the right direction, and that the idea that the solution is what you're about to hear. The strategy was designed as a catalyst for change. It aims specifically to increase the number of women in faculty positions, improve the professorial pipeline, and provide female role models for students. Only women were eligible to apply for positions in areas in which women were underrepresented. They literally created tenure tracks, STEM, that's science, technology, engineering, and math, faculty lines for which only women could apply. That is batshit crazy. That is just wrong on so many levels. But get this, here's the next thing that I've got highlighted in this piece, again published September 8th, 2022 in Nature. Many of the successful applicants reported that they would not have applied had recruitment been open to both men and women, suggesting a perceived bias against female candidates in open recruitment. Any woman in STEM who can get a faculty appointment, I don't even know what to say here.
Well,
the idea that the idea that you got a job only that you would not have applied to had you been in competition against the entire relevant candidate pool, and that you're so okay with this that you said it and it's now in an article about how awesome this initiative is?
Well,
that's ridiculous. And those people, a perceived bias against female candidates in open recruitment, even if there was a perceived bias against female candidates in open recruitment, which frankly, yes, in the past, of course there has been. We know this. This is long since understood, right? Of course there has been. But the idea that there's a perceived bias now, I don't buy. Maybe in a few rare places, in a few fields, a few old dudes who are still on committees, sure, right? But a perceived bias against female candidates in open recruitment means you wouldn't apply for the job? Are you kidding me? How are you going to do science? How are you going to be good at doing science if you won't apply when you think that there might be something that's not quite fair in the application process? What is wrong with you?
All right, 2 points. One, that bias, which no longer exists in any significant degree, is going to be created. It's going to be reinvented by this, because the point is, to the extent that you have these initiatives, they do open questions of competence. Would you have been in that position if you had been in competition with, as you say, the full range of people from the field?
I don't know. I wouldn't have applied.
Right. But the other thing is, if you go back and read that statement.
The one I just read.
Yeah.
Many of the successful applicants reported that they would not have applied had recruitment been open to both men and women. Suggesting a perceived bias against female candidates in open recruitment.
Suggesting a perceived bias. No, it doesn't.
That sentence is a non sequitur.
It is a non sequitur.
Yes.
It might imply that, But it could also suggest that these candidates were savvy enough to understand that given a limited budget of time, they were more likely to end up in a position if you'd eliminated half of the field based on its chromosomal complement or the kinds of gametes it produces.
Sorry, more than half of the field.
Right.
Because these are fields in which men outnumber women at all of the levels, and we can argue about whether or not that's due to bias in preschool and kindergarten and 7th grade and college and everything, but frankly, I don't think so.
Right. But in this case, it doesn't suggest that, right? The authors of the article have suggested that that was what it implies, but there is a perfectly rational mathematical explanation for why somebody would apply to such a position that has nothing to do with bias at all. Yep.
One more quote from this article. On the right, which if you could see my screen here, they've got, this is in Nature. This is in Nature. Affirmative action recruitment tips. Bullet points. The 5th bullet point under affirmative action recruitment tips, for those considering recruitment initiatives with an element of affirmative action, we offer some important lessons. Don't be too specific about subdisciplines. Keep your selection criteria broad to widen the pool of female applicants. I think it speaks for itself.
Yeah. It's preposterous. And if we go back several years to some of our earlier discussions, not necessarily on DarkHorse, but discussions of what this woke revolution was doing, this basically, if you imagine a world in which nothing is actually real, so the quality of your scientists and your engineers and your pilots and your doctors doesn't really matter. Really, the point is, hey, it's unfair that this field of brain surgeons, disproportionately has, Swedes, right? And so we're going to get some people from...
You're talking about turnips or Swedish people?
I'm talking about Swedish people.
Oh, wait, are Swedes turnips or rutabagas? Not sure.
I honestly have no dog in the fight, nor do I have any inkling about which of the root vegetables that suggests. But the point is, you can't just say, well, it's a tragedy that X group of people isn't represented in brain surgery or aviation and say, well, whatever we have to do to correct that as soon as possible is the thing to do. The point is actually, no, I want really good pilots and really good brain surgeons, and that's true irrespective of why there's a bias. Maybe the bias actually does reflect some discrimination, but we're going to have to think very carefully about how to get some people properly qualified to do brain surgery, and we're still going to have to assess them based on merit, and some of the people might have the mind for brain surgery, but they're not going to have the hands for it, and we really want all brain surgeons who have both the mind and the hands and aren't afraid of blood and whatever it is, right? You can't just get people into positions and say, problem solved, because you may have just caused a different problem, like the bridges are falling down and the brains don't work after the surgeons get to them and stuff like that. So, I think there's a way in which this crazy revolutionary movement does not actually understand that the world is real.
That's
right? That it requires actual expertise and not just the pretense of expertise in order to do the difficult jobs well, and that if you just put people in those positions because you like the composition of the room better, you may be compromising something fundamental and functional about our system, however it got that way.
Yep. And that's, this is a drumbeat that we have been at for a long time. But this is why we and others see in this revolution postmodernism done badly, very, very badly at its roots. But also the thing that we talk about that is somewhat different from that we talk about in A Hunter-Gatherer's Guide and elsewhere, is that sort of one of the outgrowths of a frivolous understanding of the postmodern understanding of the world, that some reality is socially created, is that if all of your world exists in this social landscape, you may come to imagine that the entire world exists in a social landscape, and therefore come to imagine that actually physics isn't real. And no one is going to say that actually out loud. But the example that I like to use is the Roadrunner cartoons. where when the Roadrunner dupes the coyote yet again into running off the edge of a cliff, it's really funny when Wile E. Coyote doesn't fall until he himself looks down and recognizes that there's no land beneath him and that therefore gravity should be affecting him. At the point that he comes to recognize the situation he's in, then he falls.
Stupid coyote.
And he doesn't fall until then. It's super funny. Why? Because even the 3-year-olds watching that cartoon know that that's not how gravity works, right? It's really funny when it's a cartoon coyote. It's not funny when you're raising your kids, protecting them from all physical stuff and only giving them social things to think about. And you end up with these children in the bodies of adults running around making claims like men can get pregnant. It comes from the lack of experience with the physical world and some really deep-seated belief, even though they wouldn't say it out loud, that reality isn't real, that it can be negotiated. So, like, everyone needs to have at least one skill, one set of experiences with the physical world, be it with hiking or carpentry or even baking, something where you can't say afterwards, actually, it looks like I failed, but I didn't fail, here's why. Right? We all need that.
100%. It is the core of an education, just even for common sense.
Yeah.
I do want to point out there's one thing about the Wile E. Coyote situation that I always feel is missing from these discussions, and I'm gonna put it on the record here.
Do it.
The most interesting thing, and I think the funniest thing about the Wile E. Coyote bit, is that it's not that the physics is all social. It is arbitrarily social, right?
The Roadrunner knows.
Well, no.
Oh.
The coyote, the physics of friction fails the coyote. As he runs off the cliff, the fact that he continues to run does not continue to propel him because he has nothing to push against.
Yeah.
But gravity requires his recognition before it kicks in, right? So it's like a world in which some physics is real and some physics is about your, accepting of it. And anyway, I always find that juxtaposition funny.
Absolutely. Yeah, you get skidding. Skidding represents real physical forces.
Yeah, the normal force requires your recognition, but the static friction of the feet against the ground, not so much. That's real.
Yep.